Just before this episode, here's how you can get more from Never a Truer Word. If you're listening to this podcast on Spotify, you can subscribe to this channel to get early access to the weekly analysis episodes, video episodes so you can see the statements as I analyze them, and exclusive content too. And if you're here on YouTube, then become a member of the channel to get early access to everything and exclusive content not available anywhere else. Hey, it's Jack, and welcome to Never a Truer Word, where I look at the words that people choose to use to see if they're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. By the end of this, you'll be able to spot the lies in this.
How long did you shake it?
I don't know.
But his hand was still out.
Yes.
Was he trying to get out?
Forcefully, yes.
Was he angry at you?
Yes.
Were you in fear?
Always.
Did you spot them? Stick with it. This is Sarah Boone. Now, it's a very popular request for me to analyse her testimony. She was recently convicted of killing her boyfriend by, amongst other things, locking him inside a suitcase overnight. A lot of interest in her testimony. And was she being honest, or was she lying in her testimony? Listen, I've called this Bad at the Basics because Sarah Boone is a bad liar. She's not a very sophisticated person. She'd like to think she's very clever, but the reality is she's not very clever, and her lies are really easy to spot if you know what you're looking for. So listen, if you are a regular here, then you are going to delight in spotting some of the really obvious tactics that she uses with her words in order to deceive and mislead in this testimony. If you're not a regular, then this is a crash course in how to spot how people lie, especially when they're being asked questions like in this court setting here. And if you're new, if you come here because you like the Sarah Boone case and you're interested in it, I think you're going to learn a lot about what really went on that night that she killed her partner. Things to watch for as we look at the testimony. Qualifiers. She's going to be asked questions. Does she answer the question fully, or does she answer just a little bit of the question and sort of qualify it to make it only true, her answer only true in a very specific way? Listen to how she answers the questions. She'll be asked a question. Does she answer the question that she's asked, or does she answer a question that she'd prefer to have been asked? Watch for her pauses. This is going to show when she's thinking about her answer. In general, truthful people, hey, they're telling the truth. They don't need to think about it. They don't need to work out what it is they're going to say. Liars, deceivers, sometimes will leave a pause before they answer because they are thinking in their head, what's the right words to say here? We'll see that with Sarah Boone and her testimony. Watch out for when she goes extra. That's when she's asked a question, she answers the question, and then she says something else, something that's not relevant to the question. Now, why would you do that? Because it's an important thing for her to say. We'll see some of those there. And something we don't talk about a lot on this channel, but we're going to look at with Sarah Boone because she's very obvious at what she's doing. Patterns of speaking will reveal a lot. Have you got all that? Stick with it. We are going to learn how to spot a liar thanks to Sarah Boone. Here's the first part of her testimony we're going to look at.
So between the 2-minute video and the 22-second video is an 11-minute period. Would you tell the jury what happened?
We continued to, speak to one another, and his tone changed, and I knew the tone, and we ended up, arguing back and forth with one another, and it was the things that he was saying very much frightened me, and cursing at me and threatening me. And
did he want you to let him out of the suitcase?
I'm sure so.
Okay, go ahead, tell the jury.
And it got very heated very quickly, and he continued to push on the suitcase. And my fear was that he was going to break out of the suitcase, knowing that it was a broken suitcase. And his hand started to come through. His hand started to come through this way. And so I shook the suitcase, trying to get his hand to go back in, shaking it, and telling him that, please stop doing this. Please stop doing this to me. Please stop doing this to me.
So his hand actually got out of the suitcase?
Yes.
And you went to the suitcase?
Yes.
And shook it?
Yes.
Did that force his hand to go back in?
No.
Right, so the first question she's asked there is between the 2-minute video and the 22-second video, so these were two videos that were brought up in evidence, there was an 11-minute period, which is not on video. Would you tell the jury what happened? And she starts by saying, we continued to, I guess, speak to one another. Now that phrase, I continued to, or we continued to, tells me that something had been going on before. Now this is where we've joined the testimony, so maybe she was talking about it there. Maybe she's saying that this is something that was seen in the 2-minute video before the 22-second video, but these words continued to say that this is a continuation of what was happening. And what did they continue to do? She says, we continued to, I guess, speak to one another. Now, I guess there's a qualifier. This is a very significant event in her life, and yet she's telling us she's guessing what happened. Or is she guessing what happened, or is she downplaying here? Speak to one another. Well, that sounds really nice and friendly, doesn't it? Yeah, we were speaking to one another. But as we'll see, and she does say that they argued, I think she's softening what happened here by putting, I guess. We find it really hard to lie. Lying is just not something that comes very naturally to us, or most of us anyway. I think Sarah's one of those people. She's not a very good liar. She's not very used to telling good lies at all. So when she says, I guess, she's kind of signaling to us, this is what I'm going to call it. This is what I'm going to label it, even though it wasn't quite speaking to one another. She says, I guess, speak to one another. And then she says, and this is that pause I was talking about. This is where she is deciding what to say next. When we're telling the truth, the words come out very easily. They just flow because we're telling the truth. We don't need to hide anything. We don't need to word anything carefully so that we get a good impression across. We just tell the truth. And here she does a lot of pausing and she's signaling to us, I'm doing some thinking here. I'm going to try and phrase the next bit with words that will work well for me. And is where she's thinking. And if you look at this answer, she says, and the tone changed. And I, and then there's a long pause, knew the tone. And again, thinking, we ended up arguing back and forth. And a long pause while she thinks about what it is that she wants to say. And cursing at me. So there's a lot of thinking going on here. So we know she's thinking about what she's saying. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean there's a lie coming. If someone pauses and thinks about what they're going to say, it doesn't mean there's a lie. What it means is, what comes next is very important to them. They're quite sensitive to what they're going to say next, and they want to make sure that it's worded correctly. Now, if you're in court, if you're giving testimony, if you're charged with murder, then why are you thinking very carefully about what it is you're going to say? She talks about the tone here. She says, the tone changed, and I knew the tone. Really interesting here, because that might at first listen sound like it went from speaking to arguing. The tone went from we were speaking to arguing, and I knew the tone. So I knew this was a dangerous tone that was coming up. I knew this is when my boyfriend was really angry with me, when he would get aggressive or anything like that. Only she doesn't say that. She just says the tone changed, and I knew the tone. She doesn't say what the tone changed from, what the tone changed to at all. And she knew the tone. She doesn't say what she recognized the tone as, or this was the tone that indicated I was in danger. She doesn't say any of those words. To me, she doesn't have the authentic experience here to talk about the tone changing to something she was scared of, something she was frightening of. It's the tone changed. And you'll notice it's not her boyfriend Jorge's tone that she's talking about at all. It's just a tone. Just a tone. No one owns this tone. She's thought about it very carefully, but she's not saying his tone changed. It's the tone changed. She says, we ended up, I guess, arguing back and forth. So we've got that I guess again. And we ended up. Now, that's a jump in time. So Sarah Boone is storytelling here. She's jumped something out because when you say we ended up, think about it. You just sort of are leaving out part of the story. Did you have a nice night last night? Yeah, but we didn't go to the bar we wanted to. We ended up in that new one. That means you're cutting out all the parts that say why you didn't go to the bar but went to the new one. You're cutting all of that out. Normally we do it for brevity. It's not because we're lying, but we ended up is a jump in time. It's jumping something in the story. Look, she's very sensitive here. So already we've got, she's qualifying and softening with speak to one another. We can tell she's thinking very carefully about what she said, and now she's missing out parts of the story. She's not telling us how they ended up arguing at all. She's not telling us the process that went there. Why is she feeling the need to hide that? She might want to get across that her boyfriend was the aggressor, but you'll look at the joint ownership here in the argument. We ended up arguing is what she said. So not he ended up arguing with me, we ended up arguing. So she's taking some ownership of the arguing. She's putting herself in there as much as anyone else. The arguing was back and forth, she says. So again, that's not just someone arguing with her all the time and telling her she's wrong and putting her down. It's back and forth. There was as much give as there was take there. And they were arguing back and forth with one another. So again, we have this jointness and unity in there whatsoever. So really, we do have this. It wasn't all one way. There wasn't an aggressor here in him, which is what she is trying to portray here. It was very much a joint argument that was going on there. And she uses, by the way, the phrase, very much frightened me. Persuasive. She can't just say she was frightened. It's very much frightened me. Very much. I want you to believe it wasn't just frightening. It was very much frightening. I wasn't just frightened. I was very much frightened. And even that phrase, the things she was saying very much frightened me and frightening me. She doesn't say she was afraid. It wasn't everything that was frightening her. The situation wasn't frightening her. It was the things that he was saying frightened her. Again, I don't think she was as frightened as she would like us to believe. She's asked, did he want you to let him out of the suitcase? And her reply is, so more thinking time. I'm sure so. Now, this is a yes or no question. Did he want you to let him out of the suitcase? Can be answered with yes or no, or I don't know. It would be another possible answer. And she doesn't use the words yes, no, or don't know there at all. It's I'm sure so. Why not just say yes? Because if she's sure, then it's a yes. But I think this is distancing that she's doing here. She can't just say yes, because that makes it really obvious that she didn't let him out the suitcase. That makes her an aggressor. That makes her a bad person if you didn't let this guy out of the suitcase. It's just, I'm sure so. She's prompted to go ahead, tell them, which means go ahead and tell the jury what happened. And she says, so there's this thinking time again before she answers the question. How am I going to phrase this so that it comes across best for me? And it just got very heated. And the word just always gets me. The word just, it's really looking to minimize and focus our attention just on one very small thing. Just look at this. It was a very small thing, just very small. Just only this happened, nothing else was happening. The word just is really a minimizer, a focuser, which makes me always think, well, what else was going on? Why are you trying to minimize this down to just something? Why are you trying to make it sound small? And what else was happening? When someone says the word just, it doesn't mean that they're lying. What it makes me do is dig in around it and go, what else was going on? We can see the and structure again in her answer. And it just got very heated. And my fear was he was going to break out the suitcase. And his hand started to come through. So once more, she's signaling to us that she's choosing her words very, very carefully here. She says he continued to push on the suitcase. Now, in what we've seen so far, she hasn't mentioned him pushing on the suitcase, but she's saying he continued to push on the suitcase. That means, in her words, he was pushing on the suitcase before, but she hasn't mentioned it. Remember, we ended up arguing. Was that because he was saying, let me out, and he was pushing to get out of the suitcase? And she skipped over all of that. She skipped over that because it doesn't look good for her. If he's saying, let me out the suitcase, I can't breathe, I'm panicking, I'm claustrophobic, whatever it is, and he's pushing and trying to get out the suitcase, and she doesn't let him out the suitcase, it doesn't look good for her. It looks like she has presence of mind and knew what she was doing. But trust me, the truth will always leak out. And I think we've got some truth leaking out here when she says he continued to push on the suitcase. In her words, he was pushing on the suitcase before, but she hasn't mentioned this. She talks about this shaking the suitcase and she says, and so I shook the suitcase. This is classic storytelling. And so when we're reliving past events, if we're telling them truthfully, we just tend to say what the events were. Event 1 happened, event 2 happened, event 3 happened, event 4 happened. When we do and so, we are explaining reasons why the story happened. So this happened and so I did this. So there's my reason, here's my justification. So when someone does and so, they're telling a story and they're explaining or giving reasons for their actions and potentially blaming someone else. And so storytelling. So when you spot that and so pattern when someone is telling you a story, they're giving you reasons, they're giving you excuses for what happened. They're not just telling you about events. When she talks about him pushing on the suitcase, it's he continued to push on the suitcase. So she's giving her boyfriend agency there. He was pushing on the suitcase. Very different to the hand coming through. His hand started to come through. Now, in those words, the hand's almost acting on its own. It's not he put his hand through, it's his hand started to come through, as if the hand has a life of its own and it is working on its own. Well, we know that can't be true. So she's taken away the agency from him of his hand coming through. Did it come through? Really, did it come through? And it's his hand started to come through as well, by the way. So that's interesting. It's not his hand came through or he stuck his hand out the suitcase. It's only started to come through the suitcase. So why has she phrased it like that? Why is she not telling us that his hand came through? He pushed his hand through. It just started to come through before she, in her words, shook the suitcase. Not easy to say. Shook the suitcase. Try it. Right. But I really believe she did shake the suitcase because she says it 3 times. I shook the suitcase. I shook the suitcase. Shaking it, telling him that. I think we've just invented a tongue twister. She said it a lot better than me. But she said it 3 times. She really vividly described shaking the suitcase. So I really believe that happened. This is one of the most believable, honest things that she says there. And then we've got some interesting change in language. She says she was shaking it and telling him that, please stop doing this. Now that doesn't flow. Telling him that, please stop doing this. It would work if it was telling him that he needed to stop doing this. Telling him is a command, right? That's controlling language. I was telling him what to do. She says, telling him that, please stop doing this. So I think she pulls out of that controlling language because telling him very much makes her sound like she's in control of the situation. And then she repeats 3 times, please stop, which sounds nicer, doesn't it, than telling him. I was asking him nicely, politely, please stop, please stop doing this to me. Please stop doing this to me. So I think she is belying there with the telling him and then not repeating that, but repeating the nicer, please stop, that she was in control that night. And she was probably a controlling person there with her language there, telling him it was very natural for her to be ordering him around. Again, not entirely sure I buy some of this. Please stop doing this. Please stop doing this to me. Please stop doing this to me. What is this? She doesn't say. It's only this. So was there really something happening that really made her afraid? Please stop doing this. She doesn't say, please stop fighting against me. Please stop being aggressive towards me. Please stop saying that you're going to kill me when you get out the suitcase. She doesn't say any of that. She just says, stop doing this. The next section of the testimony, question and answer. So his hand actually got out of the suitcase. Yes. And you went to the suitcase. Yes. And shook it. Yes. Did that force his hand to go back in? No. Here we have a 1-word yes or no pattern. Very believable. These are all yes, no questions that we were talking about earlier. And she sticks to the pattern of saying yes or no. 1-word answers to the questions. I believe all of this. His hand got out the suitcase. Yes, believe that. Went to the suitcase. Yes, believe that. You shook it. Yes, believe that. Did that force his hand to go back in? No. You can see no pauses there, no thinking about what she's going to say, nothing extra. It's very, very simple and clear. 1-word yes, no pattern. However, we're about to see that broken.
So you're shaking it. Were you shaking it to try to get the suitcase, his hand back in?
Yes.
How long did you shake it?
I don't know.
But his hand was still out.
Yes.
Was he trying to get out?
Forcefully, yes.
Was he angry at you?
Yes.
Were you in fear?
Always.
If he would have gotten out of the suitcase, what would he have done to you?
Like he used to tell me, he probably would have made me unrecognizable, or I would have lost my life.
Did you lose the grip on the suitcase?
Yes.
Where was the bat in relation to the suitcase?
It was leaning up against the dining room table, right there.
How far was the bat from the suitcase?
3 feet, 2 feet?
Was his hand still out of the suitcase?
Yes.
So we can see that one word, yes, no, pattern going on again. So you're shaking it. Were you shaking it to try to get to the suitcase? His hand back in? She says, yes. How long did you shake it? She says, I don't know. Now, I don't know is, again, it's a valid answer to a yes or no question. And this maybe serves her a little bit. How long did you shake it? I don't know. Now, you think about, you could be shaking it for a short time. You could be shaking it for a long time. How long? Maybe she thinks, right, I don't know in exact seconds or minutes. So I'm going to say, I don't know. That might serve her well, but it is also believable in the context of what's there. She could have said, just a short time, and I would have gone just. I'm picking on that. She could have said quite a long time. I'd have gone quite. What does that mean? But she goes with I don't know. It's a safe answer, but I believe she means I don't know the precise duration that I was shaking it. But his hand was still out, and she says yes. And was he trying to get out? She says forcefully yes. Do you spot the outlier in that section of answers? Yeah, it's forcefully yes. It's not just, was he trying to get out? Yes. It's not just, was he trying to get out? No. It's forcefully yes. She's added the word forcefully in there. That means it's extra. Why is it extra? It's important for her to get across some impressions, to put something to us that is not quite in the question. She's not asked, how forcefully was he trying to get out? She's asked, was he trying to get out? And she says, forcefully, yes. So she wants us to believe that he was doing this forcefully, right? That's an impression that it's important that to her that we get, or the jury gets, if you like, that he was an aggressor. Now, why would you want to put that in? Potentially if he wasn't an aggressor. If this is the picture that you are painting, and in all these questions you have not had a chance to paint the picture because you're just answering yes, no to these questions, then at this point, I want to get across that he was being forceful here. So she adds in forcefully in the answer to the question. Another outlier, was he angry at you? She says, yes. Were you in fear? And she answers, always. Not yes, but always. Now, she was in fear at that time, and that's very important because part of her defense will be, look, I was in fear for my life, therefore what I did was justifiable, because if I did what many would consider the right thing and let him out the suitcase, I feared for my life. That's part of her defense. So she was in fear that night. Why did she not just say, yes, yes, I was in fear? She says always, which is not talking about that night at all. It's talking in general. And it's got to be a lie because we can't be in fear always. That just does not happen in any situation. Maybe most of the time you can be in fear. Maybe you feel like you live your life in fear, but always is not a truthful answer. So she's turned up the severity here and she's taken the question from being, were you in fear on that night at the point he was in the suitcase trying to get out? She could have just said, yeah. Instead, she says always. So I don't believe that she was in fear that night at all. And I don't believe she was always in fear either. I think that, and it's the breaking of the pattern to get across what is important for her to say to us. I believe that is a lie. She is then asked, if he would have gotten out of the suitcase, what would he have done to you? And she says, like, he used to tell me he probably would have made me unrecognizable or I would have lost my life. Interesting answer. This is the point I was talking about before. Her defense rests on her saying that she felt in fear for her life at this point. That's why she did not let him out the suitcase. And this is really, really weak as an answer because she could have said something much stronger. I feared he was going to kill me. I thought if I let him out the suitcase, I was dead, but she doesn't. We've got the word probably in there. We've got this in general. So it's like he used to tell me. It's not what he was telling me at the time. He was not saying, if I get out of here, I am going to kill you. It's just in general. He used to tell me this. He probably would have made me unrecognizable. So probably just means not very likely, kind of likely. It doesn't mean definitely. So she's holding him in because of a probability. That doesn't sound like someone in fear of their life. And then the ordering here is really interesting because the first thing she says, which is the most important thing, or the thing that came to her head first, is he would have made me unrecognizable. And then the second thing is, or I would have lost my life. So let's flip that around, because really, if you were worried you were going to be killed, that would be the first thing you would say. I was worried I was going to be killed. I was worried he was going to kill me if I let him out. Or he's threatened to make me unrecognizable before, beat me up and make me unrecognizable. But the ordering is really strange there. So again, I don't believe this is authentic at all. And notice, I would have lost my life, not he would have killed me. The I would have lost my life is very distant. It's kind of passive. I would have lost my life. How? You don't say. You don't say who would have done it either. It's not the more direct. He would have killed me. So I do not, again, believe that she was really in fear of her life. We've seen too many examples now where she had a chance to say, I was in fear for my life that night, and she didn't. She's asked, did you lose the grip on the suitcase? She says, yes. So once more, we're into this. Yes. One word, answer, pattern. Then she's asked, where was the bat in relation to the suitcase? Now, that's a really interesting question. Where was the bat in relation to the suitcase? So she's not asked where the bat was. She's asked where was the bat in relation to the suitcase. Very subtly different question. And her answer isn't where was the bat in relation to the suitcase. It's where was the bat? It was leaning up against the dining room table right there. So she doesn't answer the in relation part. She doesn't say, where was the bat in relation to the suitcase? She just says, where was the bat? And this will become important. She's asked, how far was the bat from the suitcase? And she says, 3 feet, 2 feet. She thinks about it and then says, 3 feet, 2 feet. Now, 3 is thought of in this statement analysis terms as the liar's number. You'll be amazed at how often 3 turns up when someone tells a lie. The theory behind it is multiple. One thought is that 3 is quite hard to prove. So if you said there was a guy waiting outside that looked suspicious, you will have to describe the guy. You will have to talk about all sorts of things about this one person. If you say 3, then you can have some deniability there. If you make up 3 guys, what did they look like? Oh God, there was so many of them. There were didn't take all of them in. How many times did you do something? 3. Again, can you describe all 3 episodes? No, I really can't, because there's so many of them. It's been seen over and over and over again. 3 is the liar's number. It's a number liars pick almost automatically to describe something, and that's where she's gone. How far was the bat from the suitcase? 3 feet, and then 2 feet. And finally she's asked, was his hand still out the suitcase? She says yes. What are your thoughts so far? Listen, if you like this, then I've a couple of other episodes to recommend you. One about Jen Soto, the mother of the murdered girl, Madeline Soto. She's being interrogated by the police. And again, we see many patterns very similar to Sarah Boone, where she doesn't answer questions directly, and she's very qualified in some of her answers. And also she uses words that lets the truth leak out. And there's a couple of episodes but on the Karen Reid trial and testimony given there. The one about I hit him. It looks at all the testimony from mostly first responders and some people who were there on the morning that Karen found John O'Keefe, who all say that Karen said that morning, I hit him. But did Karen say those words that morning? I believe the testimony from those people is really interesting. If you want to get more like this, then hit the subscribe or follow buttons. It means you'll get new episodes as soon as they arrive. And if you are interested in learning more about deception detection and how to look at someone's words to see if they're telling the truth or not, then why not sign up for the monthly newsletter? You'll find all the details in the notes for this episode. And by the way, if you want something extra, if you want to get episodes like this before anyone else, or exclusive episodes with lots of hints and tips on how to spot whether someone is lying in their words, then why not become a member of the YouTube channel or a subscriber on Spotify? You will get early access to episodes like this and a whole load of exclusive content as well. Right, let's go on with Sarah Boone's testimony, and we're still talking about the baseball bat.
And was he getting out of the suitcase?
He very much was trying, yes.
And so what did you do?
For the split-second reaction that I had, I happened to see that, and I grabbed the baseball bat and was trying to poke his hand to go back in, to please don't break through, please. So I hit his hand.
Did you hit the outside part of his hand?
Yes,
We've seen the photographs of his left hand. Did you cause the bruising there?
I'm guessing yes.
Now, you've seen the bat. It's a youth bat.
Yes, I bought it for my son.
Is this the bat you used?
Yes,
And you said you poked him with it?
yes, I kind of pushed, like I held it with the skinny part here and then
So the grip here,
prodded at it, yes,
you grabbed it with both hands here,
yes,
and then the barrel of the bat, the big part of the bat is here.
correct.
And you thrusted it into the different areas of the suitcase?
I started with his hand, and his hand, he was still trying to get out. He was still trying to do that. So I started to push on the suitcase around it, hoping to have his hand retract and go back inside.
So what was going on with this bat? The first question she's asked, and he was getting out of the suitcase, and she says, he very much was trying, yes. So we've got this persuasive language. Again, this could just be a question that's answered, and she's very capable of doing that with just a yes or a no. But no, this is going extra. Very much is trying to persuade us of how much he was trying to get out of the suitcase, but was trying. So the question is, he was getting out of the suitcase, and she says he was trying. That implies failure. So after all of that, very much persuading, telling us he was failing. He very much was trying. There comes the yes at the end of it. So she doesn't just say a straight yes, which she's entirely capable of doing and being very honest about what was happening. Here she's wanting to paint a bit of a picture for us. She's next asked, and so what did you do? Now this is where she doesn't answer the question that she's asked. What did you do? Because her answer starts with not what she did, but an explanation as to what happened. She says, for the split-second reaction that I had. So this is her saying something that is important to her, something important that she thinks we need to hear. For the split-second reaction that I had. So she wants to convince us here that she didn't have a lot of time to think about it. Again, this is trying to get across that she was in fear and acting out of fear, and she only had a split second to make a decision. It might not have been a great decision, but it happened because she only had a split second to make this decision. I don't think she only had a split second to make this decision. I think she's lying about this. I think she's lying because when she's lying, she lies to us. She puts it all out there. She's not trying to hide things. In fact, she's trying to construct things. So for the split second reaction that I had, is trying to persuade us that this wasn't premeditated in any way whatsoever. It was a split second and she had to make a reaction. That thought for mine is further bolstered by, I happened to see that. I think she's talking about the baseball bat. I happened to see that. It's casual. It's, I didn't know what to do. I was in so much fright. I was in so much fear. I was panicking. And then, wow, I just happened to see the bat. I don't believe the bat was not thought about beforehand. In fact, I don't believe the bat was 3 feet away and she just happened to see it at the corner of her eye. She's been too persuasive that the bat was very handy, that she thought about the bat in a split second, and she just happened to see it. That wasn't in her mind to use the baseball bat at all. That's what she's trying to persuade us, but I really think the baseball bat was premeditated. Perhaps she went to get it from somewhere else, or perhaps she had it close by because she planned to use it, but I do not think it was a split-second panic decision to use the baseball bat at all, based on her words and the fact she's trying to persuade us that it was a momentary decision. It was something done in the heat of the moment. Don't believe that for a second. She says she was trying to poke his hand to go back in. And if you remember everything that she said there, there's poke and there's prod and there's push as well. But She's not very sophisticated. I think the truth comes out. She wasn't trying to poke his hand to go back in. She says, so I hit his hand. And you notice that her attorney here is trying to use words like poke and prod and push. And they've probably agreed, don't use the word hit. Don't say that you hit him. You were prodding him. You were pushing him. You were poking him. Don't use hit. But she's not very smart. And so therefore, so I hit his hand comes out. And it's so I hit his hand. The so is saying there was a reason. It's this and so storytelling again. Hey, very straightforward and direct. I hit his hand. I believe she hit him. And we have this and so storytelling. And I grabbed the bat and was trying to poke his hand, so I hit his hand. So this is this and things happened, events happened, but now here's a reason why something happened. Here's an excuse for something happening. So there's some and so storytelling going on there. She's asked, did you hit the outside part of his hand? Yes. We've seen the photographs of his left hand. Did you cause the bruising there? She says, I'm guessing yes. We've got this guess again from her. She seems to use this phrase, I guess so, or I'm guessing, when she is trying to minimize the consequences of what she's done. So here we've got, did you cause the bruising? She can't just say yes, because again, that looks like violence. That looks like she's a bad person. It's a bad answer if she just says yes, which I think is the truth. So she kind of softens it by going, no, I'm guessing, yeah, could have been. Don't really know, but yeah, it's possible. I'm guessing yes. I think the answer is yes. I think she whacked him with the baseball bat on the hand. That's what caused the bruise. And now she's trying to soften it by kind of saying, well, I guess that's what's happened. You've seen the bat. It's a youth bat. She says, yes, I bought it for my son. Now, once more, this could just fall into that really nice yes-no pattern that she has when she's being honest. It's a youth bat. Yes. But she goes extra. I bought it for my son. And this is a resume statement. Look at all the good that's in this statement. I'm a mother. Look, I've got a son. Just in case you don't know or in case you've forgotten, I'm a mother. I have a son and I bought it for my son. So I'm not just a mother with functions or a title of being a mother. I'm a nice mother. I bought a baseball bat and an age-appropriate baseball bat for my son. Such a subtle thing, but so important for her to get across and so important for us to notice. She could have just said yes, but she's in image management mode. She's doing resume statements here. I'm a mother and I'm a nice mother because I buy baseball bats. And then we get back to pushed and poked. And you said you poked him with it. Yes, I kind of pushed, like I held it with the skinny part here. And then, so she says, I kind of pushed. Well, what's kind of pushing? Did you push it or did you kind of push it? I.e., did you hit him? Was it a hard push? Was it a really hard push? Or was it just a little nudge? No, you kind of pushed. So again, we're not dealing with the most sophisticated person here. Look, I'm not qualified to diagnose, but I think she's got some developmental issues going on there. She's quite childlike at times. And children, rubbish liars, very easy to spot their lies using some of the techniques that are used here. I kind of pushed. So you didn't push. You're kind of pushing. You're telling us here, you're changing the words. You're not saying what really happened. You're telling us what kind of happened. And once more, she says she prodded at it. Yes, so we've got this downplaying of the hit. Come on, the guy got a bruise in his hand. You do not get a bruise from prodding, pushing, poking. You get it from hitting. So we've got this downplay of what happened. She's asked, you thrusted it into different areas of the suitcase. And she says, I started with his hand. And his hand, he was still trying to get it out. And he was still trying to do that. So I started to push on the suitcase around it, hoping to have his hand retract and go back inside. So we've got this issue with the hand again. I started with his hand. So when we say we started something, I started with something, that means we went on to do other things. And she's not just going to tell us that. She's going to just tell us where she started. Just his hand, not his entire body, maybe not his head, not anywhere that was like that sensitive, just his hand. I started with his hand. That's what I'm comfortable of talking about. Thrusting, come on, hit the baseball bat towards his hand. But saying started, means that lots of other things went on afterwards. We've got more started. I started to push on the suitcase around it. So started to push on the suitcase around it means lots more happened beyond this, because if you started to do something, there was more that followed it. And you're not telling us this. You're just telling us the initial things that you did, the softest things before you went more extreme. We've got that downplay again there with push on the suitcase. So push is downplaying, so is on the suitcase, because this wasn't an empty suitcase that you were pushing on. This had your boyfriend inside it, Sarah. So you didn't start to push on the suitcase. You're minimizing things. You're downplaying what went on. You started to push on him inside the suitcase. And she was hoping to have his hand retract. What, automatically? I mean, that is really, really interesting. Hoping to have his hand retract. Not hoping to have him pull his hand back in, but just hoping to have his hand retract, almost like it was someone who had no control over what was happening, or there was no control over his hand at this point. Interesting. Was he actually conscious at this point? Was she just hoping his hand would retract because of all this shaking and prodding that was going on? What's interesting here is she's sharing her thought process with us. She's sharing what she was doing and what she was hoping to achieve by it all. She's going into some detail about her thought process. That will become kind of relevant as we look through some more of Sarah Boone's testimony.
You made those injuries.
I did,
We've seen the photographs.
yes,
We see the bruising. Is that from that bat?
yes.
Eventually, did his hand go back inside from you doing?
Yes, finally, he had subsided and retracted his hand.
So in your mind, did you prevent him from attacking you?
Absolutely. Split-second decision.
Now, once he retracted his hand, do you remember zipping it up some, or what did you do in relation? Because he was upside down, was he not, at that point?
Yes,
At some point, you flipped him back up.
I did.
Tell how that happened.
He wasn't cursing, he wasn't threatening, his hand was inside foremost. There was no more of him trying to break through the suitcase. So I felt safe enough to turn it back over. It wasn't happening anymore.
She's in her pattern again. You made those injuries, I did. We've seen the photographs, yes. We see the bruising, is that from the bat? Yes. We've got that simple 2 words with I did, honest approach to answering the questions. She's then asked, eventually did his hand go back inside from you doing, and she interrupts, says yes. Finally he had subsided and retracted his hand. So once more we've got this concept that her boyfriend, maybe not fully conscious, he had subsided. I mean, that's a really weird way of talking about someone subsiding. I mean, what is subsiding? Slumping, collapsing. But he had subsided. Not calmed down, not gone still, subsided. Really strange word to use. Now, here's a crucial question. So in your mind, did you prevent him from attacking you? Like I've said before, this is a very crucial question, because if it was self-defense, if she was doing what she did to protect herself, then that's a lot of her defense in court. It's a very crucial question. So in your mind, did you prevent him from attacking you? And she moves away from yes, no answering here. The first word she says is absolutely. Never believe someone when they say absolutely. Dig into it a little bit more. I'm not saying every time you hear absolutely from someone, it's a lie. What I am saying is when someone says absolutely, look at the words around it, because it's not a yes. It's like a super yes, but there's no such thing as a super yes. Yes is as certain as it gets. So they really want to persuade you with their answer. It's not just yes, it's absolutely. Why not just say yes? Why do they want to go that extra and persuade you, like here, that she thought that what she did prevented him from attacking her? Absolutely. So absolutely puts you on alert for deception. And then the next thing, split second decision. She wasn't asked about the decision at all. Did you prevent him from attacking you? Absolutely, split second decision. Her second mention of this split second decision. So for me, this is a constructed answer. It's a lie answer to get across the point that she wants to get across, that she thought she was going to be attacked, and what she did, locking him in a suitcase and batting him with a baseball bat, prevented this attack. But absolutely says to me, nah, you're trying to persuade me of something here. And split second decision, you were not asked how quick a decision it was that you made. You want to get across that you acted on instinct, you acted out of fear. So you tell us split-second decision, even though it's irrelevant to the question you were asked. Next, she's asked, once he retracted his hand, do you remember zipping it up some? What did you do in relation? Because he was upside down, was he not, at that point? And she says, yes. Bad question, right? Compound question. 2 parts to this question. Do you remember zipping it up? And he was upside down at that point. She says yes. We don't know what she says yes to there. She doesn't elaborate at all. She's backed away from this a little bit by not answering both parts of the question and just giving a yes where we don't know which part of the question she's saying yes to. At some point, you flipped him back up. She says, I did. So we're back in this pattern of honest answering. Tell me how that happened. And she's asked, tell me how that happened. And she doesn't say how that happened. She tells us what was not happening. He wasn't cursing. He wasn't threatening. Yeah. So she doesn't actually tell us how she flipped the suitcase back up. She says his hand was inside foremost. So foremost means that was the most important thing to her. That for some reason, this hand coming out was really frightening and threatening to her. And the thing that made her abate was the hand went inside. Now, that's interesting. That could be the truth, I guess. Conceptually, that could be the truth. But as I think I've said, I think his hand going inside was a sign that he was unconscious or the fight had gone out of the guy. His hand was inside foremost, the most important thing. Only it wasn't the first thing she mentioned. She says he wasn't cursing, he wasn't threatening. And then his hand was inside foremost. Interesting. There was no more of him trying to break through the suitcase, is what she said. No more of him trying to break through the suitcase. No more reminds me of parenting. Reminds me of teachers. There will be no more of this behaviour. There will be no more food if you don't eat up your tea. Yeah? No more is very ordering language. It comes from a parent talking to a child. It comes from a severe boss talking to people that work for him. It comes from teachers. There will be no more of that sort of thing. So again, controlling language there, I think, from Sarah. There was no more of him trying to break through the suitcase. Now, that's interesting because at times she says he was just sticking his hand out. He was starting to get his hand out. He was just trying to get his hand out. That's not breaking through, is it? That's just trying to escape. So I think at some point he was thrashing about and violently trying to get out of this suitcase that she had trapped him in for some reason. Break through is not just sticking your hand out the zip a little bit. Start to get your hand out. He was trying to break through. He really was trying to get out. And then once more, she doesn't have the realistic, authentic experience to tell us what was going on. She just says it wasn't happening. It wasn't happening anymore. What was it? She doesn't say. She doesn't say I wasn't in fear anymore. She doesn't say I was no longer frightened. Just it wasn't happening. Is she hiding something with that it? Or does she not have the ability to say what it is because it didn't really happen? We've got one more bit to look at in the testimony. This is cross-examination, so a slightly different tone here.
So what was your level of intoxication at this point in time when the first video was filmed at 11:12 p.m.?
Do you mean from lack of sleep or alcohol?
From the alcohol.
What was my level?
What were you feeling? Did you have trouble with your balance?
I was more tired than anything.
Did you have trouble with your balance?
I don't believe so.
So you were able to flip a suitcase over with a 100-pound man in it, right?
I mean, yes, it happened.
Okay. How about your speech? Do you feel like your speech was slurred?
Clearly.
How about your inhibitions? Do you feel like you were doing things that you wouldn't do when you were sober?
I wasn't thinking about that.
Well, on reflection, do you feel like this is something you would have done when you were sober?
I didn't know me and George.
So this is all about her drinking there. She's asked, so what was your level of intoxication at this point in time when the first video was filmed at 11:12 p.m? She says, do you mean from lack of sleep or alcohol? She's told from the alcohol. She says, what was my level? Question mark. Questions to questions. Questions she does not want to answer. So again, very much like we saw before, she needs thinking time to construct the words to say what it is that she wants to say that gets across her story, her image that she wants to portray, her version of events. And those words don't just fall into our heads unless we're extremely fast thinkers. Most of us need some time to work on those words, and that's what's happening here. She heard the question fine. We know intoxication from lack of sleep. No, intoxication does not come from lack of sleep. It comes from alcohol. So this is a stupid question. You're not trying to clarify anything here. You're buying thinking time. Then she's asked, from the alcohol, well, what was my level? Well, yeah, what was your level was the question that was asked. What was your level of intoxication? So you did hear that. So this is all about her not wanting to go, she either wants to go, she was either sober or really drunk, yeah, or not very drunk, but she doesn't want to give us the true answer here. She wants to hold back, because truthful people tend to just answer questions in general. Here, she's asking questions to questions. So from this, I would assume she was really intoxicated, and that's why she doesn't want to come off and say that. She wants to pretend she's clarifying the question again, so she can think of what it is that she wants to say. She's asked, what were you feeling? Did you have trouble with your balance? And she says, I was more tired than anything. Well, that doesn't answer the question. Did you have trouble with your balance? Yes? No? She's perfectly capable of answering questions yes and no. I was more tired than anything. Again, that doesn't say you weren't drunk. That says you were tired, but you can be tired and very intoxicated at the same time. So she doesn't answer the question. When someone doesn't answer the question that they were asked, you got to wonder what it is that they're hiding. Normally, it's the worst answer to the question possible. So, did you have trouble with your balance? I think the answer is yes. Did you have trouble with your balance? She's asked to clarify, and she says, I don't believe so. So, this is not no. This is not yes. This is a very vague, I don't believe so. Remember earlier, she was talking about how she knew it was a split-second decision and about all this prodding, and the reason behind the prodding was to get this hand to retract. All of a sudden, that perfect recall of the night and her thought processes and what was going on, the split-second decision, is all gone, because it serves her for it to have all gone at this point and for her to say, I don't believe so. So I think she was drunk. She had problems with her balance. She's asked, so you were able to flip a suitcase over with a 100-pound man in it, right? And she says, I mean, yes, it happened. And this is, again, when something's put to her that's kind of undeniable because there's facts and other evidence that back it up. She can't just say yes. She has to do this softening. So very much like we saw, I guess so, earlier. This is, yes, it happened. The same with the answer to the question, okay, how about your speech? Did you feel like your speech was slurred? She can't say, yeah, it was. She says, clearly. I think she's referring to the fact that we can hear her speech in the video and it is slurred, but she can't just say yes and be honest and open. She's very closed off and very guarded. Why would that be? One of the reasons for that is when you're lying. How about your speech? Do you feel like your speech was slurred? Clearly, she says. Next, she's asked, what about your inhibitions? Were you doing things that you wouldn't do when you were sober? And she says, I wasn't thinking about that. So she's telling us what she wasn't thinking about, but that she's not asked in the moment. In the moment, did you think that? She's asked now, do you feel like you were doing things you wouldn't do? And she says, I wasn't thinking about that. So once again, boom. It's all gone. This perfect recall she had on the night. She wants to say that this was a sharp decision made at the time, fully compos mentis, not intoxicated. She was in fear. Alcohol played no part in this. This was, something that really went on, and she's dodging that. I don't get this bit at the end. Do you feel like this is something you would have done when you were sober? And she says, I didn't know me and Jorge. So there we go. Sarah Boone. What do I think about this? Look, she was the aggressor. I think there's no hiding that because she is minimizing so much of what she did that night. She wants to talk about pushing and prodding, but she mentioned hit once with the baseball bat. I think there was some real aggression going on there. Was there aggression from her boyfriend? We don't know. We weren't there. But what I have to say is that everything she talks about on that night, aggression from the boyfriend, it doesn't stack up. Nothing she says about it is realistic. She talks in general terms about her always being frightened, which is like much, much wider than that night, that situation she was in. but she doesn't talk in very authentic terms at all about him having any aggression on the night, about her having fear for her life that night. So nothing she says about him being aggressive stacks up in the words that she says. And by the way, the other thing was the baseball bat was not a split-second decision. I don't believe that. It was premeditated. Whether it was something she planned to do beforehand, I'm going to get the baseball bat and I'm going to absolutely whack him, or whether it was, this guy's in a suitcase and he's not calming down, I'm going to get the baseball bat and calm him down. I don't think it was a split-second decision in order to sort of pacify him and stop the aggression at all. In other words, I think the jury got it 100% correct. She is guilty of being aggressive and of really awful behaviour towards her boyfriend. And now she is going to be sentenced shortly for the murder of her boyfriend. So what did you learn from that? Look, when you're talking to someone and you're answering questions, then think about the qualifiers. So does someone really answer a question, or do they sort of answer the question? Do they answer the question they're asked? Or do they answer another question, the question they prefer to be asked? Like, were you intoxicated on the night? Don't believe so. Or, I wasn't thinking about that. Just look, do they answer the question they were asked? Watch for the patterns. And we saw from her there was a really big pattern. And or the fact she's able to go yes, no, don't know. And then when she doesn't do that, when she could say yes, no, don't know, but she says something extra, then when she breaks the pattern, that's very interesting. Those pauses, thinking about what it is we're going to say, that's when someone is very sensitive to what they're talking about. So watch out for pauses when someone's answering, when they're thinking about what it is they're going to say. They're under a lot of pressure, and ask, why are they making those pauses? Why can't they just answer the question automatically? And watch for when someone goes extra. That's when they answer a question and then say something else. Like, were you in fear for your life that night? She went absolutely split-second decision. Why is that extra thing being added in? Because it's important to the question, the person answering the question, that they get across this image, that they say things that they want to shoehorn into their answers. So watch out for things that are extra. If you want more from this channel, you can become a member of YouTube or subscribe on Spotify. You'll get episodes like this before anyone else, and also you will get exclusive bonus content as well. You can also leave me a comment and let me know what you think about Sarah Boone. You can do that here on this platform if you can, or you can get in touch on social media. All the links are in the show notes as well. And please, if you've enjoyed this and if you think there are more people that would like to see Sarah Boone broken down and her lies exposed, then do press the like button. That helps this get out to a lot more people, or share it if you want as well. Neveratruerword.com is the website, and there you will find more video analysis like this, including the ones of Jen Soto and Karen Reed's trial that I mentioned. You'll also find more podcasts, and as I said, you can sign up for the newsletter, neveratruerword.com, and we'll see you soon for something new from Never a Truer Word.